Yeah, Ron?
Ready? Thank you, Robin. Thank you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Tēnā koutou Pūmua. I'd like to start with our karakia tīmatanga. Mai te pai maunga, rara ki te tata. Mai te tonga, rara ki te tata. Tēnei te hapuri ki ai tātahi, anō whānau, Toki, Uye. All right, thank you very much. Do we have any apologies today? Someone like to move that an apology be accepted? Councillor Lawrence, someone second. Councillor Cherry Campbell, all in favour? Against? Carried. Conflicts of interest declarations. Are there any conflicts of interest that need to be declared? There being none, we move on. Public forum, we have 4 speakers today, and welcome everybody. Good to see you all here. Please don't be nervous. We're ordinary people. I'd like to start with a petition to stop fluoride. Mary Byrne and Eleanor Harper, please take a chair, come to the table. You have 5 minutes.
And you heard that you will have to.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Mayor and councillors. Okay.
You have 10.
Yeah. 5 minutes.
Petition.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council. Sorry?
So,
That's having enough. 5 minutes each. Yeah. 5 minutes each. Yeah. I know.
it's, so the standing orders suggest that individuals have 5 minutes to speak to council, and a petition has 5 minutes to speak, plus questions from council. And that's the case.
We might need some questions.
We've got 5 minutes each.
And some questions maybe, if you've got it.
We're pretty flex today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wasting 5 minutes.
There is a thing called chair's discretion of
Okay, thank you.
10.
Okay, so good afternoon, Mayor and councillors. I'm here to express my concerns about the erosion of democracy in the country and the Ministry of Health's dereliction of duty regarding the health risks of adding the neurotoxin fluoride to our drinking water. The Fluoridation of Drinking Water Health Amendment Act and the imposition of huge fines for non-compliance is, as Winston Peters has stated, a despotic Soviet era disgrace. Decisions over whether or not we should fluoridate water should be democratic and made through our local councils. It's also a violation of the New Zealand Bill of Rights, which states that informed consent is a prerequisite to any medical treatment. This is therefore a program of mass medication. I believe that the Health Ministry and the physicians they employ to advise them are doing a huge disservice to the nation by not keeping abreast of the current scientific literature, which has shown overwhelming evidence that fluoridation poses an unreasonable risk to the developing brains of New Zealand children. The time may come when this council will be given directives to fluoridate our drinking water. That is unless New Zealand first bill to repeal the law that took decision-making from councils is returned to it, or unless enough councils request that there's a moratorium on fluoridation pending an independent inquiry into the impacts and risks of water fluoridation. A good question is, why is New Zealand mandating compulsory water fluoridation when most of the world has rejected it, or is in the process of banning it because it is unethical, ineffective, and potentially harmful? 98% of Europe have rejected it. Less than 4% of the world now fluoridate water, and that is mostly in the US. Robert Kennedy, who's the health secretary for the US, however, is moving to having it banned in the US, and hopefully we won't take 26 years to follow suit as we did after the US banned lead from petrol and paint. So why does the Ministry of Health officials, including the Minister of Health, continue to repeat the worn out and disproved platitude that fluoride is safe, effective, and affordable, when on all accounts it has proven to be none of these. South American research over the last 10 years, which has been replicated and published in really prestigious peer-reviewed journals like JAMA Pediatrics and Environmental Perspectives, shows that babies in utero and children who do not have a properly formed blood-brain barrier, that's infants, show that they show cognitive impairment when they are exposed to fluoride. And this is in the concentrations in the same or even less than in New Zealand water. This is measured as 4 to 5 points of IQ lost. It's also worth noting that the most vulnerable of all are babies who are bottle fed with fluoridated water. They receive very dangerous amounts of fluoride, 212 times more than breastfed children, babies. The pharmaceutical recommended dose for pregnant women and children under 3 is nil. Is it effective? No. The most recent New Zealand school stats show that there's no difference in outcomes between fluoridated and non-fluoridated areas. Any benefit from fluoride is topical, not systemic. Toothpaste works. If you want to protect your skin from the sun, you drink sunscreen or do you put it on your skin? Is it affordable? No. Because it's ineffective, it's an enormous waste of millions of taxpayers' dollars. We all know that prevention is the best cure. So why doesn't the health ministry divert these millions of dollars into education and treat the cause of tooth decay rather than trying to medicate the symptoms? Countries such as Scotland, Wales, and Japan have targeted programs in schools which include toothbrushing, health education for parents and children, reducing sugar, and ensuring regular dental checkups. Since the inception of the Child Smile program in Scotland in 2011, the dental health of children in Scotland has exceeded that of children in New Zealand, and it's saving the National Health Service £5 million a year, $10 million a year in treatment costs, mainly by the elimination of anaesthetists required to extract children's rotten teeth. There is no need to invent the wheel. We could adopt such a program. It is education alone which can permanently eliminate the preventable causes of tooth decay. Surely the permanent solution is preferable to medicating the whole nation for the foreseeable future for a small targeted group of children with rotten teeth. And as a byproduct, lowering the IQ of the next generation of New Zealand children who will surely need it intact to navigate the world they are inheriting.
And we'll take questions at the end. So good afternoon, Mayor and councillors. Thank you for allowing us to speak and thank you for your attention. My question is fluoride the new lead? In 1973, the US Environmental Protection Agency introduced regulations to phase out lead from paint and petrol. Over the following years, they had banned petrol and banned lead in US petrol. However, it took us 26 years to follow suit. So this delay spurred a research article to be published in the Journal of Environmental Health, trying to understand why it took New Zealand so long to implement this ban and why we were so far behind the rest of the world. The authors from Otago University cited a link of New Zealand regulators willing to implement the precautionary principle. Despite good international evidence that the lead levels in New Zealand's child population was harmful to brain development, regulators erred on industry's call for absolute proof that these so-called low levels cause harm. Unfortunately, we are seeing the same thing today with fluoridation. The international research that so-called low levels of fluoride cause neurological harm to children is even more compelling than it was with lead in 1996. There is far more research on so-called low-level fluoride, and it is of much higher quality. The loss of IQ experienced from low-level lead is the same as the losses found by low-level fluoride, around a 5-point IQ drop for every 1 milligram per litre increase in fluoride in water, which is round about fluoridation. The US National Toxicology Program published their 8-year systematic review in August last year and found with moderate confidence that 1.5 milligrams per litre in fluoride in the water is neurotoxic. While that may be nearly twice as high as fluoridation levels, which are 0.85 milligrams per litre, there is absolutely no margin of safety. They also reported that the highest quality studies were from Canada, where fluoride levels in the water were less than 0.7 milligrams per litre. So they're lower than us in Canada. In September last year, a US federal court found that fluoridation posed an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children. During this hearing, the judge heard from one of the US EPA's risk assessment experts who was defending the EPA's lack of regulation, that the NTP review was of high quality and that a normal risk assessment would demand a margin of safety of at least 10 from the lowest level where a substance had been found to cause harm. A margin of safety, therefore, from 1.5 milligrams per litre would bring a maximum allowable level down to 0.15 milligrams per litre, which makes fluoridation untenable. Since the court ruling, 60 communities in the US have stopped fluoridation. That's around 9 million people. Utah announced last month that fluoridation is now banned in that state, and Florida has just done the same. Many more states are looking at similar legislation. Robert F. Kennedy announced a few weeks ago that he is working with the EPA to review the maximum contaminant level goal for fluoridation. We expect the EPA will introduce regulations to bring allowable added fluoride down to zero or near zero. And today, Robert F. Kennedy announced that they're banning the fluoride tablets because, as Eleanor said, it doesn't work by swallowing. So tablets have always been useless. It was always only meant to be applied to your teeth. It was always just a mistake. Are we going to make the same mistake we made with lead? The evidence is clear that fluoride is neurotoxic, even at the levels we are exposed to via fluoridation. When will we implement the precautionary principle? Surely neurological harm is a serious issue that cannot be swept away with, she'll be right, mate. We are asking you to lend your weight in helping us have this issue thoroughly reviewed. This needs to be done before any more councils are directed to fluoridate. Would you please agree to sending a letter to the Prime Minister asking for a commission of inquiry as the Rotorua Lakes Council is doing? Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from councillors?
Thank you, both of you for this. It's really good. I presume you realise Carterton doesn't have fluoride.
Of course, yes.
That's
I've
probably why
actually
you
talked
live
to the
here.
council before.
Yeah, I've been here too. But my question to you is, do you know exactly how many councils in New Zealand have fluoridated water, or what percentage of it is?
Yeah, it was 23 councils out of 67. But because the government brought in, shifted the decision making to the Director General of Health from the local councils, the Director General of Health directed 14 more councils to start. So we now, at the moment, we have 32 out of 67, because not all of them have started. But Carterton was sent a letter in November 2022 advising that there would be a directive coming.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I understand that. I remember that. So,
Yeah.
And when you tell us that Carterton doesn't have the fluoride, our children have better teeth than in Masterton, in the whole of the Wairarapa than in Masterton, even though Masterton has fluoridated water and the rest of the Wairarapa doesn't. It's kind of interesting.
thanks for
Are there
that.
any other questions? That's fine. Thank you very much. Just a point, I think we can receive your petition, but at the moment it's outside of standing orders with any 20 ratepayers on there. So I think 13. You only have 13.
Oh, we can easily get 20.
We only have 14.
You had
Ratepayers.
you had a number of signatories that weren't ratepayers.
Oh, I'm one.
I'm sure you've
Okay.
received your submission and we'll take note of it and we'll have a conversation
Do
about
they
it.
have to be ratepayers or live in the district?
To receive the submission, we have to have a minimum
people that live here, they don't have to be ratepayers.
Yes.
Live here.
Yes.
Okay, I would have thought they all were. But okay,
Okay.
Could we just say too that there's these sheets actually ask you as councillors what you should do to support this?
Yep.
And then there's the 12 reasons that come off the Fluoride-Free website, which are really, it's well-informed website if you want to go to it, and it says 12 top reasons why fluoride should end. It's much more detailed than what we can do in 5 minutes.
and I think somebody could request to get a paper or something back to the council.
Okay.
Then it would keep the conversation going. I don't know.
And if you want to talk from us, we are more than welcome to give you a talk, but we can't do it really very well in 10 minutes.
By the way, as a recycler, have you ever, have you ever tried cleaning a toothpaste tube open and cleaning it?
Oh, good, is it? Very abrasive.
Don't breathe it in.
Oh, well.
Seriously. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So, second public forum, could I call Eleanor Harper, please? Eleanor Harper. Sorry, no, I've got concern the government leadership, it's the same thing. One, two, no? 1 and 2, so they're both the same. Christ, sorry that. Number 3, regional transport plan submission update. Roger Bolter, please. 3.
I thought you would welcome an update on where things are at with my submission on the regional public transport plan. You'll remember I mentioned it at the last public forum and gave you the text of my submission. Tuesday last week, I spoke before the Regional Council's Transport Committee, and it was very well received. I structured my presentation around 3 points. One is you have to break this mindset that the Wairarapa rail service demand is all about commuters in the morning, then they sit there in Wellington, they come out in the evening. If you look at travel demand, it's actually through the day, and you only have to look at the Hill Road traffic to see that. Also, that if you, once the first trains have gone, and the peak trains, you have nearly 4 hours to wait for the next train, and most people are not going to wait that long. They're going to drive over the hill. So there is potential to get a lot of traffic off the hill if you have a through the day service. The second point was they can do it now. They have the rolling stock. They have 3 trains go in and 2 of them sit in Wellington all day. You can get 2 passenger trains passing each other at Featherstone. It's not, which is about halfway, of course, between Marston and Wellington. It's not ideal with only 1 platform, but it can be done, and there's a second platform planned. And thirdly, the issue I mentioned based on a technical paper about rail congestion in the Hutt Valley. It really needs 4 tracks somewhere, and I was suggesting that should be at Waterloo Station. Now, it was received well. I had a question. One of the questions was from Councillor Adrienne Staples, our own councillor, and she said she enjoyed reading it. And her question was for staff, how do we work in what I had suggested into their plan? So that was very positive. The Times Age reported it, but there were some mistakes in the initial report. So I wrote a letter to the editor to correct them, and the editor came straight back and said, would you like to do a short article? Oh, yes, please. So I did that. That appeared last Saturday. You might have seen it. And I'm also told it appeared in the Post, which means Wellington people have read it too, including political people in Wellington. So all that's very good. And today yesterday there was a report. I haven't had anything official, but the Regional Council in their decision on submissions have accepted that public transport in the Wairarapa must be expanded. I'm not sure whether that's me or whether they're talking about bus. It's probably both. But they're not sure how it's going to be funded. So they're looking at alternative funding sources. So that's it. I have an idea this will be quite a long fight because the regional public transport plan is very detailed. It looks to me like a document written by people very close to the detail of overseeing public transport services. So it's not going to be easy to get them to sort of stand back and say, now, come on, what are the needs? But it's very positive so far.
Awesome. Any questions for Roger? Councillors?
Mr. Worship. Roger, thank you. My question just around your first point that you said about the increase of services. How do you think about that coinciding with the struggles that Greater Wellington are already having with Transdev? And if we're wanting to increase services and they can't fulfil what they've got to do now?
Yeah, I've not got involved in the train paying campaign. And really it's for two reasons. One is I'm not a regular rail user. And I think that campaign needs to be driven by regular rail users. Secondly, I think they're talking about two quite different issues. The train paying campaign, they're talking about the existing services, especially the peak services. They want them on time and to be actual trains, not buses. Whereas what I'm talking about is something rather different. It's the sort of looking for the future. So I don't see, one of them cancelling out the other. I think you've got to look at both of them, and they are quite different from each other.
Just a supplementary to that, if you think about the increase in trains that Greater Wellington proposing in 28, are Transdev going to be the contractor? And they're already struggling. So what are they putting in place now to ensure they're going to be able to sustainably provide managers and drivers and so forth in 28 when the service does change?
Well, the frustration I've had with that proposal to have extra trains when the new rolling stock comes is it's still this mindset that the demand is in the peak hours. So they're saying, well, we can't put any extra trains on until those new trains arrive, because they're assuming it's the peak time and there are 3 trains and they have 3 trains go in. So we can't provide any extra trains. What I'm talking about is through the day to get the general demand. If you look at the traffic on the hill, for instance, it's through the day, it's all sorts of purposes. And probably the other thing I've said in the submission is there's no research on whether the people using the morning trains or the peak trains are actually work commuters. A lot of them are probably not work commuters. So if someone wants to get in at 10 o'clock, well, they'll get the peak train. And maybe they're going to a hospital appointment or a student going to a lecture or something. So, if you had through the day trains, you'd probably take some of the demand off the services too.
5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I guess the question I have been is, given that off-peak hour is covered by the gold card, they're guaranteed payment. They're guaranteed clientele. Off-peak hours. Yeah. Thank you, Roger. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the update. Thank you very much. So, call to the table, Hayley Malcolm, please, Hayley. Proposal for the Carterton indoor sports facility.
Yeah, so sorry, not too much of a public speaker, but so what I was wanting to envision for the Wairarapa in general was to create some sort of indoor sports facility for not only just the youth and the wider demographic from the young to the old. What we don't have in the Wairarapa at the moment is an indoor sports turf facility which caters for indoor netball, soccer, cricket, can also be used for indoor bowls. So when your elderly are outside playing bowls and the weather turns, they've got somewhere to go to. And then also proposing, if we were going to go big and large and actually do it properly, a hardball floor surface. I was directed to go and speak to the soccer. I have spoken. Okay. So I have spoken to them and they've informed me of a few different options that you guys had proposed prior to COVID, let alone there was also talks of rugby going to Howard Booth and amalgamating there. They were going to sell off their land at the Rugby Football Club. This would actually become a prime opportunity where you could have your outside field sports within the Howard Booth Sports Park area and then designate your Carterton Rugby Club area into an indoor sports facility where you could have multiple sports. Not only that, but you could bring your aquatic over to there as well, and you could potentially also relocate anything from your bowls and croquet, which is situated out here, I believe. That could open up that space for other use, or I suppose if you look at the two areas as individual potential zones, you could actually create a multi-purpose. The soccer was concerned that when the rugby would move into the area that they would have less of a say on the use of the land because they would have had all the money because they would have sold the land. You could counter that by in the middle of how both have got a field which has got lights. You could repurpose that into an artificial turf. So soccer has a playing field and a practice field. They don't want to lose their practice field because that's where they get extra money from the likes of Greytown, etc., where they come and practice in off season as well. That can also be used for rugby, and then rugby could use the so-called third field, which they have said that they have pretty much all retired and only use if their teams get up into a number that they can actually need to use it. But if they had a artificial turf to practice and train on, and that can also become a backup field for them to play on, it would leave the number one field for their primary games, area for rugby to come in. Building a new club rooms for rugby, I'm pretty sure they'd be open to, if you provided a nice enough club room area for them, they would probably come to a deal or arrangement where they could potentially sell or gift the land for the purpose of creating a multi-sport facility. The idea of having the indoor at the rugby grounds is that you have commercial buildings on one side, you've got a railway line on the other. Building a high building is not going to affect residents, where my initial thought was to go Taverner Street, but you're going to have the impact on the residents and potentially the camping route. So it was more of trying to, so that was sort of my vision. Not too sure if the Carterton community in itself is looking for something to benefit everybody. The amount of sports and the amount of different sports that can be played in those facilities are vast, and they can facilitate from young to old. But the idea that the ultimate plan is to make it affordable, because there's no point in building a facility if no one can use it. So, that's my overall
Thank you.
thing that I would like to see something.
Councillor Newman.
I think it's an awesome idea. I would totally support it. Me and my friends just the other night were talking about wanting to play indoor netball, and there's nowhere in the world I'd offer to do that. My question would be, is it a thing that councils do, own indoor sports stadiums?
So Walter Nash Stadium over in Taita is owned by the council.
Okay.
That facilitates, in one part of it, they have 3 full indoor netball courts. They also hold, which could easily fit the indoor hockey as well. They've got basketball courts in there. Basketball hoops come down. In the same facility, they have their library and everything, a library function and all that kind of stuff. And they have another 2 netball courts on, must have been the original stadium. So they're built on.
Mm-hmm.
And that works quite well. So because also being council owned, you open yourself for the ability to get funding from a lot more different resources than you would if you were privately owned. So ideally, if I can't get some sort of council behind me or some sort of set it up in some sort of charity basis, I will try and look at doing, at a minimum, the indoor netball side privately, but I don't want to go private because you're looking at trying to make a profit and you're trying to hit those marks where my ultimate goal is to make it affordable for everybody. I want families to be able to come in and create a family team of indoor netball, change the rules up so the old bogies can't lean over the babies while they try and take a shot. It's something that is more community focused rather than,
I think that's really, really cool.
Thanks, Haley. I was part of conversations that went on probably in 20 and 21
okay, yeah.
with the rugby club.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering, have they actually said that they would look?
No, I haven't. This is just phrasing.
Yeah,
I've only spoken to soccer.
Because that was the proposition that they were wanting to do initially, was a sports hub and selling up and moving to Howard Booth,
Okay.
but they went away from it because they would lose control. They wanted to retain control of their grounds and so forth, whereas it would be council land that they would be going on, whether they were given a peppercorn lease or whatever. They went away from that because they would lose control of that. So that the sports hub side of it, as far as I'm aware, is
Out of the,
yeah, they want to stay where they are.
okay.
And I think I could add to that because we're going right back to the time when Elaine Brazendale was a councillor here, and she chaired the Howard Booth sports complex idea, and all of the codes came together. After that fell over, the bowling club, who had already merged the two bowling clubs together in anticipation of
Yeah.
moving in, they decided that they were staying here. They don't want to move again. They don't want to consider, or unless there's been a change in that. The tennis were to go here. But the upside, I can tell you, you probably do need to have a sit down with the rugby club because they are branching out. They are merging with net. They have already merged with netball.
Yeah.
They are merging with other sports codes, and they are in discussions about creating a complex down there. Not talking indoor at this stage, I don't think, but there are so those conversations are live with the rugby club. It's just a steer for a conversation you might like to try, but
Yeah.
I think the idea would gravitate with people other than who's going to fund it.
Okay, your worship. I did direct Hayley to speak with football. The plot of land at the back of Howard Booth Park, which was where Hayley first indicated interest, is currently leased to the footballers, and their lease was taken up because they expected to expand into that area for junior football. So that was our direction to Hayley, and it sounds like things have progressed with other codes, but initially that plot of land was the area that Hayley was looking for, and we
Yeah, it was more,
would need to change the lease that we've got in place with football if we were to progress on that definite piece, and that's a possibility. But
yeah, so when I spoke to them about that, I spoke to the guy that was head of men's, and they pretty much all confessed that they sort of run their own, even though men's is over here and they do all the stuff to the federation, the juniors pretty much all run themselves, and it sounds like they don't really let the juniors on their main fields. So this is why they've had to go into the Taverner's side, even though they're not sort of using the third field as much. They must be a little bit precious.
Yeah.
So I'm not too, so there is room to fit everybody in, but it's just, there seems to be a bit of dynamics there by the people that I've spoken to.
Just got one other. I'm just wondering if you're aware of the Eastern Growth Area of Carterton, because it's something that I've raised a while ago about the extension of Carrington Park, but there's potentially land on the other side of Rutland Road that could hypothetically, with town moving that way at some point in the future and extending Carrington Park to Rutland Road, and then on the other side of Rutland Road having a new complex there could be a way of having it close to town.
Yeah, so it's more of a thing that I would like to just plant seed if it is something that the council would like to look into. I don't obviously expect an answer now, but if it is something that is has an interest or along the lines of, I would like to be involved in some way. My history is working in the sports area, and I've worked for New Zealand Community Trust for over 12 years. So they were huge, 40 million into community projects a year. So that's sort of where I have my passion from. So,
Chair Kim.
I just have one question, thanks, Hayley. Are you just speaking with the Carterton District Council, or have you thought of?
I'm speaking with Carterton at the moment because Carterton's central. So, and if I go to Marsden, I'd have to find land that's Solway based. The biggest, I believe the biggest hurdle for a lot of, especially families, is that distance to the other side of Marsden, to try and keep it more central to be able to facilitate and supply the whole Wairarapa. And
You contemplated either Clearville?
I have thought about Clearville. I do know that they have their own thing at the moment. There may be areas especially in the AMP showgrounds that I might be able to look at potentially. But I do know that they lease a lot of their land to different areas, and a lot of that land is used up at some stage. And like cross country or equestrian every year is it uses the whole facility. It doesn't just use an area. So it's very, very difficult to try and put
What size area are you actually looking for?
So, for example, an indoor hockey field court would be around about the 50 metres by 25 metres. If you go a little bit bigger than that, you can put in 3 netball courts, which then you're looking at badminton, volleyball. I mean, we don't even have indoor. Do we have indoor volleyball? I don't. Anyway, but it opens it up to a variety of different sports. The indoor netball courts are 12 metres by 25. But then if you put 2 of those together, the middle net raises, and that's an indoor soccer. So ideally, if you wanted to hold regionals, like in getting into your super leagues and the next level up, you're going to want about 40 courts at minimum to host. But then, I mean, the thing with indoor sports turf and indoor nets is that you can go up because they've only got a height restriction of 4.5 metres, 4.5, 5 metres. So you can go up to another level, and you can have another set of courts on the top level, and then you can host nationals.
I was just thinking more that particularly Howard Booth and where the Carterton Rugby Club is, and even in the future urban zone, which is on the east side, with that being predominantly residential around it, you may come under height restrictions for resource consent, whereas out at Clearville, there is already sports ground and facilities there. And I understand what you're saying about the cross country, but there's also a lot of other land that possibly, it's just a thought.
Yeah,
If you had a conversation.
AMP before, so I am fully aware of the land that they do use and the land that they've already got. Unless they changed it around, and where everything is set up, their permanent structures are.
Just maybe worth having conversations, like spreading that net wide, pardon the pun, because that can then open up other conversations in the rohi as well.
Yeah, so it is another avenue that I have thought about going to. I was just more concerned about access. I mean, if they had put the roundabout at that Chester Road, that would be perfect. but it was just one of those things you've got to worry about the traffic in and out. You're dealing with families, and there's a lot of, when you're dealing with such a facility, there's a lot of traffic in and out. So it would increase traffic at those intersections.
Thank you, Hayley. I think you've given the council something to have a ponder out. I think that the idea is exciting, and I can sense that. It's have you got a team behind you, or is it
at this stage? It's just myself at this stage, because if it does turn into something that the council would go into, it would be, I'd obviously be dealing with councillors, etc., and you've probably got a lot more people behind you that you can bring into the spectrum. But if I had to go myself, I've got a lot of support in the indoor sporting community because I used to umpire and play over in Wellington. So I've got communities over there. And people that own and operate the Hutt Valley one as well. So we used to call them back in the day the Ish Brothers, but it's their kids that have taken over now. So I've potentially already got nets in that to go.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, every idea starts with every every facility like this starts with an idea,
Yeah, sorry.
and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Shannon, thanks for taking the time.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I've got to go pick up. Oh, that's so. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Right, open for discussion, comments, any?
Ask a
Yes.
question. Parks and Reserve funding, Jeff. Does that allow you to put a building on a park?
It incorporates recreational facilities. I don't know whether it would cover off an extent for building, but it's predominantly for parks, reserves, sporting activity, and that includes recreation.
Thank you.
Is it one of
Yes.
Wainawa? Is that,
I was thinking
that, no, I'm not.
it as well, yeah, and there's no restrictions around there in terms of height, and would it fit within the district plan? Well, you've got a go zone down there,
Yeah. Good thought.
yeah, just. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you very much. Youth Council, moving on to item 6, Youth Council views on the agenda items. Have we got a report?
All right, so I'm I'm Brooke. I'll be representing Youth Council today since Josie was a bit busy and couldn't attend. So yesterday at our meeting, we discussed the Wairarapa Library Service report as well as the satisfaction survey. Regarding the library service report, Youth Council supports the recommendations on it. We know that the current model is kind of outdated, and with being part of SMART, it achieves the same outcome. As young people, the library is one of the safe places that we can just be, whether that's utilizing the internet and or just reading a book or just spending some time somewhere quiet away from prying eyes, or if they just want time on their own with friends. If Carterton District Council, Wairarapa District Council? No, Event Centre. I'm silly. Carterton District Council, yeah, just focus on one library. We can do much better for our community, and it also helps with us having accountability and autonomy over our own space, rather than having the input from other councils on what we should do with our library, when we should be controlling our own one, making recommendations as the community requires or requests. Yeah, and we think that changing the system will just remove barriers and help us make changes far easier without needing the approval and input of other councils that most of the time don't really have a clue what's going on with other people. So yeah, that's one of the library service. With the satisfaction survey, Sarah gave us a pretty high level presentation of survey results, really letting us know what everyone's been saying and things that have been happening around with it. We're excited to work with the comms team for sure in the future to help modernize the language and make the survey more youth friendly and much easier to read for younger audiences and people who want to submit their ideas that are around our age. So yeah, it'll just help us provide their own ideas, and we're excited to get in touch with the comms team and show what we think could be done with a future session on collaborative design. So yeah.
Excellent. Any
That's
questions
our
for
meeting
Brooke and from councillors? I'll just start with saying I thoroughly enjoyed last night and all afternoon.
Yeah.
I just didn't get enough pizza, that was all.
Dual pizza last night.
So we went real fast.
We didn't know if a pile of dust could eat.
I just get skin. Any questions for Brooke? No, look, I'll just, if there's not, I'll just say that I enjoyed being, sitting there and hearing the discussion, hearing the debate. It was really cool. And I think your suggestion around language and terminology will be helpful.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks, Bob.
No problem.
Right. Thank you. Where are we? Time. Item 7, confirmation of minutes of ordinary meeting 2nd of April. I'm taking it that they have been read. Would someone care to move? They're a true and accurate record of the meeting.
Just on page 10, it needs a correction. I didn't second the motion. I abstained from voting on that.
Page 10, we have an amendment. Talking revokes. Page, sorry.
Down,
Oh, about couples.
Okay, you've got you seconding it and abstaining.
yeah,
Might have been another Steve.
could have possibly been.
Can anyone recall?
We can check the recording.
Your recording on that.
Check on that last one, Robin. Looks like the B revokes the CDC appointment on cobblestones. We just need to confirm who seconded that motion.
Okay, so with that amendment, are there any other amendments? Errors, corrections? No, could someone move that with that amendment? The true and accurate record. Thank you, Councillor Hayden, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Steve. All in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Moving on to reports, item 8.1, Destination Wairarapa Quarterly Report. Same, please.
I'll kick us off. I've just looked at my notes, sorry, on that previous, sorry to interrupt. Steve Lawrence, it's actually Lou and Lou Newman proposed and Steve Lawrence seconded. You're welcome.
We're happy to take a retrospective amendment on that, team. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Chair. Destination Wairarapa.
Well, thank you. Councillor, you had the chance to read the report. They're getting a bit slimmer. I think the important, one of the important things to note from the statistics is that where the total guest nights are down for the Wairarapa, but so they were across the whole country. Domestic spending was down, but not so much as in the rest of the country. And in terms of international expenditure, we were leading the pack in terms of increase. Long live the visitors from beyond our shores. The paper also then goes on to talk to a couple of the report goes on to talk, just sort of float a couple of things for your consideration, or at least things that we're thinking about in terms of the idea of a regional brand for the Wairarapa, which would make it easier for sort of combined advertising, and also the need for product development work. And for those of you who were at the Economic Development Summit on Friday, that was also raised there in terms of support for small business to develop and deliver product that would attract people to the Wairarapa. The other thing to notice is that Anna has been extremely busy working in concert with Tourism New Zealand, which the government has swamped with money to bring Australians in particular over to New Zealand. And so we've been working particularly in the context of the Classic New Zealand Wine Trail, and our part in that to encourage people to come down this side of the coast and enjoy what you can find over here instead of the other. After the timing of this report, Anna spent a really good time with tourism operators, just showing them around and showing the opportunities there are to bring people to the Wairarapa. And apart from that, the last part of the report is showing you the sort of advertising that we've been doing, which has been, in my view, very, very well received and very cost sensitive in terms of we'll be able to do a lot with what little we have. And the last thing to say to you is, look, the reporting that we do aligns with the requests that there are in the MOU. If you want different reporting, the MOU is you're going to be discussing about later on. And if there's anything different you want, please let us know in the context of the MOU negotiations. You want to add anything, Anna?
Do I have time? Am I allowed? Yeah.
Of course. Been waiting. So you have time.
Good, thank you. I'm just, thank you, Roger. I just wanted to talk a little more about the international tourism data. So if you recall, some years back, we talked about we needed to build resilience in our tourism economy and the money that comes into the region, and that we, through COVID, we benefited hugely because we are heavily domestic orientated with our visitors that come here. But then when there's sort of a national situation, which we've had with cost of living and high inflation and people holding on to their cash, because of that high domestic, we also hurt substantially more probably than some of the other regions who attract international visitors. So we have been working really hard on that international product marketing in that angle, and it's really starting to reap the benefits. And I know, it's very rare. So I've been sitting in front of many of you for the last 5.5 years to be number one in New Zealand in any data form. To be international spend growth number one was a huge satisfying point for me. It was off a very low base, small amount of growth, but we will take that because Wairarapa doesn't often sit at the top of those graphs, and it's a really nice place to be, and particularly because I have spent a lot of time in the recent months, me and Barb as well, in Auckland, talking to key wholesalers and people who determine whether they send international tourists down this way. And Tourism New Zealand flying the flag on, classic New Zealand wine trail. And in actual fact, yesterday, it was quite nice. We had Tourism New Zealand, one of their marketing people got in contact and said, well, we need some nice images to celebrate, Sauvignon Blanc. We were able to send a very sexy photo of Urla, and it ended up on the 100% Pure New Zealand webpage today, which has 3 million views. So it's developing those relationships and creating a profile of quality in our region. And I'm just thrilled that we're starting to get some traction. And, a lot of it with Dark Sky and the Reserve and Star Safari, a lot of it's coming out of Carterton. So thank you. Thank you for supporting Destination Wairarapa and believing that we can keep fighting the good fight and promoting the region. As you would have seen in the report, we did a promotion in conjunction with the Wellington Walks, Find Your Wild, and we highlighted Fensham Reserve. There will be another similar type of activity through Wellington NZ in the Find Your Wild Wellington Regional Walks using Fensham Reserve. It's such a great asset, and people love to visit it. So thank you.
That's great. Questions? Yes, Councillor.
I had a question with regards to your idea of there being a brand across the councils that's not Destination Wairarapa. I wonder if you could talk about why you think that brand isn't Destination Wairarapa and what you are envisaging there.
Yeah, sure. So it's when I say a brand, it's not a logo, it's not a tagline, it's not a sexy ad campaign. And I point to Manawatu. They have recently gone down this pathway, and Manawatu is made up of Palmerston North, Fielding, and also Horowhenua. And Manawatu and the what they call an identity, it's really sexy and it looks really good. And the opportunity there is it's not just for tourism and it's not just for councils, it's for food and fibre, it's for any other industry. When you're talking about your region, whether it's Wellington or whether it's Hawke's Bay, they're a wine country. It sort of says what it is on the box. And we don't have that that sense of who we are. And that's what I'm talking about. It's not, people get caught up in campaigns and taglines that sound really naff. That is not what I'm talking about. It's just when we say, I come from Wairarapa, people know, oh, that's where you have great wine. That's a Dark Sky Reserve. That's where
food and fibre. There's the golden shares happening there. And sorry, I'm focusing on sort of tourism-y things, but it could be manufacturing. It could be oh, you guys have got some really cool startup tech industry happening in the Wairarapa. It's creating for outwardly, a communication about who we are, who lives in this region, and inwardly, it's a sense of pride. It's what is it to be Wairarapa? And we did with the destination management plan, and we did the community engagement around that. We did a lot of consultation around what people felt about being part of the region anyway. So we kind of have sense of the community voice, but we never took it that extra step. And Destination Wairarapa is an organisation. We're a tourism RTO. We don't represent the people who live here and our identity and who we are. Is that?
No, it does, yeah.
Totally. Thanks, His Worship. Anna, Roger, I just had a question on your income or your financial statements.
Yes.
I was impressed by your growth in membership. I'm just wondering what happened there? Have you been out and was there a big promotion or?
No, it all comes down to when the money comes to the bank account. So in actual fact, our membership year finishes on 31st of March, and we put out our invoices in April. And more often than not, as the years tick by, those invoices don't get paid through until the following financial year. And so what you'll find is that is the end of the last membership year, and we've just put the invoices out for this membership year, so they won't probably turn up until the next one. It's just there's quite a lag time in when people want to pay.
The Wairarapa way.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I've gone down.
I know, sorry about that.
But to answer your question, I said, we have actually been increasing a membership. I mean, you have to have a formal, the board has to formally approve people coming in. And over this last year, we've had a lot more in than we've had out.
Right.
And generally the reason why people do resign from, because it's a membership organisation, is because it might be an Airbnb, for example, or, like a bed and breakfast, I should say. And they've, the people who are running it have gotten older and no longer want to service that unit, or it's a second house and they've had family come home, and that is happening quite regularly. And so they've stopped allowing it to be rented, and therefore they don't become a tourism member any longer. There's also people who sell their businesses, and the new people will go and talk to them about whether they'd like to come on board. But so that's a whole new membership. But then somebody's dropped off in that time. Interestingly enough, the cycle of resignations and applications tends to be quite stable, and so there's always some new stuff coming on board, and that's a good thing. That's a turnover of tastes and trends.
Councillor New.
Question, is the electronic card spending, remember we used to be able to see Carterton, Masterton, stuff like, it's all together now.
Yes, I can get it separately, but they only do rolling averages annual, and so I kind of was going to hold off to the end of the financial year. When it's rolling annual, there's not much of a trend if I show it to you every 3 months.
Okay.
But on an annual basis, you might be able to see something a little bit more meaningful.
Okay.
But I can.
No, that's fine. I just noticed the difference.
Yeah.
I always like to see our little flat line there.
Certainly next,
Yeah, flat line.
certainly next reporting period, which will be the end of June, then I will split them into 3.
Thank you.
Comment, not questions. I'll leave it to questions first.
No, comment too.
I would just like to pass on, we've had some recent visitors over from Sydney, and they popped into the eyesight up in Masterton, and Julia was absolutely blown away, by the amount of information up there, but also the staff that she interacted with.
Yeah.
She just came and she was like, oh my God, there's this little place behind the cafe. And I'm like, oh, that's the eyesight. And she said, so please pass on to the staff
Thank you. Thank you.
She was very impressed.
Yeah, we've got a really lovely bunch of women who really love talking about the region and what you can do here.
She was in there for quite a while.
Yeah,
She was made up with it, so she was happy.
okay, thank you for that feedback.
And yeah, thanks, Miron. Yeah, just a pat on the back to you, Anna and Roger, for the work you're doing, and great to see you getting something in the Kia Ora magazine in Air New Zealand.
Yeah.
That's a real coup to be able to get that in there and get a couple of pages on it. It's really good.
Yeah.
Really good Wairarapa places to visit. So yeah, well done for that. And I hope that, and obviously it is paying off already. So
Yes. The interesting thing about the Kia Ora magazine, it is so well read and so highly regarded. There was with the Greytown honey, there was an international tourist who'd flown, her and her husband, they'd flown up to Auckland, and they were about to depart, I don't know, 2 or 3 days later back to wherever they come from. She so loved that picture and got in contact because it was the flowers more than the Greytown honey, but the flowers. She it's not breed, grows those particular flowers, dahlias. She jumped on a plane back to Wellington, hired a car and drove out to it and went and spent 2 or 3 hours just going through the paddock with the dahlias. The power of that in this, Ula, honestly, we've got so much. Tourism New Zealand is absolutely in love with that place, and rightfully so. And it's a wonderful, sorry, I can spiel how amazing it's biodynamic. They use the reserve, it's stars and moons. It's, it's everything that we have a dark sky reserve, and we grow this fabulous wine in this quality, beautiful place, which is just so charming to visit. It's outstanding. So it's nice that we're getting some, traction and some awareness.
Feel comfortable? Everyone fine? Oh, thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have one recommendation that we received from someone like Soladella, seconded by Councillor Cherry. All in favour? Aye. Against? Motion is carried. 8.2 on page 31, proposal to disestablish the Wairarapa Library Service. Who's going to speak to the Jeff? Or
sorry,
Glinda?
Glinda, come and
There
join
she
us.
is. Super Bowl, man.
Kia ora koutou. I'll take the report as read, but just a few things that I wanted to highlight in there. So the Wairarapa Library Service was established in 2020 to create the efficiencies and a collective network across Carterton and South Wairarapa. So when we employed the library manager in 2019, that is what we were hoping to achieve. And we did that with a view to modernise and shift towards this integrated model. As you can read in the report, despite that, we've still had some quite fundamental operating model issues.
Can I just one thing? Just says in here it was established in 2000, but that's a misprint, is it?
No, that's my notes. I wrote 2020. Sorry. Thank you. Established in 2000 is right. In 2019, we had the first review and we appointed the combined library manager. With the hopes to develop the operating model. So the fundamental issues that are in here that been barriers, they're all back office barriers. They affect management and they affect library management. They don't affect what the community is seeing and the experience that the community is getting in the library. In 2021, we've joined the SMART Consortium, which is made up of the 3 Wairarapa libraries and libraries across the Wellington region. And that has enabled Carterton Library, South Wairarapa Library to connect in, and the users of the service have now got access to over 600,000 items right across the consortium. With the separation, the with the separation, we'll still be able to access, and SMART still carries on. So just because we are proposing to disestablish Carterton and South Wye, we would still be a part of the SMART collective. Going alone enables us to focus on what we will want to achieve here, how we want to operate the library going forward, and just really focus on further developing and modernising the Carterton Library for Carterton ratepayers. And just noting, South Wairarapa met this morning and have their paper has gone through. Yeah, fully supported by them.
Good. Any questions? Councillor Newman, please.
Question about how at the moment, and correct me if I'm wrong, where the hub for the smart libraries and the Wairarapa, so everything gets delivered here, sorted and then shipped out for the other libraries. Will that continue to happen? And if so, will that be a thing that's going to be helped to be funded by the South Wairarapa libraries if it's taking up space and staff time?
It will continue to happen for Carterton. South Wye will then have to pick that up.
They'll have their own hub. Okay.
Yeah.
Further questions? Yes. Yes.
Comment in here somewhere about, I'm struggling to find it, but about the cost of couriers. Is it meaningful?
The cost we've seen an increase through SMART with the cost of couriers. That's one of the things that we've flagged to elected members before. And the SMART collective are looking at different ways on how to manage the courier costs that are ever increasing. Carterton will see a reduction in that going along. There'll be less crossovers and back and forths. But it is still a factor that the SMART collective are working on to try and find alternative models, which is potentially looking at employing a driver to go around the whole lot, right for Capital and the Wairarapa, or just trying to find a way with the courier companies to see if we can get a discounted rate or something.
And you've also made a comment in here that we may pick up an extra part of an FTE in terms of, I guess you know what I'm thinking. Is one going to kind of balance the other a bit?
The courier costs are increasing, but they're not significant. Is that?
Be a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Yep. They're not material.
I kind of had a question around that FTE as well, because we will no longer be jointly employing a library manager and us then taking on a 0.5 FTE. Does that kind of equal out, net out?
That make
No, the 0.5 was an addition.
addition.
Okay.
Makes it a 1. Yes, Councillor Hayden.
Just following on from these questions, and a comment, I just kudos to you for the work you've put in to try and keep this running as long as you have with the level of struggle that has been. Since I think it's no mean feat to manage 2 different councils and their competing interests. And I think this is another example of how having the staff behind the scenes trying to work things through when the governance level aren't combined just makes a really hard job for you guys. And so credit where credit's due there. My questions with regards to the additional cost, I think having a request for non-budgeted funds on the day we're looking at the annual plans concerned me, but also with regards to the self-service machine, and I note that you say it doesn't replace having human interaction, and I would totally agree with that. My question is then, do we need to still do the self-service machine, and could that not be something that we actually put off and we keep the level of service with human interaction, but actually that's not a priority for the library at this point? Question.
think that's definitely something that we can look at and consider through the separation process. So currently we're working on tagging all the books and creating the tags and the RFI. We haven't looked at the self-service machine. I think that's in year 2 or year 3. So it's definitely something we can consider and look at. And I think through the process of the transition, we'll be throwing up a whole lot of things and going, what makes sense? What's the most cost effective? How do we balance that? So yes, it's definitely something we can look at.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Linda. Similar question to Grace. What do you see as being an immediate downside to customers as such, as you've mentioned in your report, if we didn't provide new budget for a 0.5 FTE?
So in the report, I did note some of the hours that the Southwest staff are working in our space. What that would mean for us is the potential of, if we have staff sick, or if we have staff away on leave, we are going to potentially have an impact to the level of service. So if we've got a couple of staff away on leave and then one calls in sick, we might have to look at closing libraries to, as we don't have the cover over that period. So having the new FTE come in just gives us that assurance that we can continue to operate at the level of service without open hours how we currently have.
Because you've currently got some cover from South Wales, some of these.
23 hours a week.
So supplementary to that, our library service manager only really did 20 hours for Carterton and did 10 hours for South Wairarapa.
No, so that was a split role 2020.
I think what's written in the report that they will be.
You look at page 35.
There's something written about the split.
70-30.
70-30 split. Well,
Yes, or
some contracts are 50-50 and 70-30.
Yes, so this is 50-50.
This was, yeah.
So yeah, my question was around the minor increase in personnel costs moving from the shared 20 hours per week to a CDC only position of 30 hours a week. So I was thinking that extra 10 hours that person is going to be spending on our library, can that help sustain that 0.5? So we don't need a new 0.5 FTE.
I think it still we would still need the FTE. Yes, Louise comes in, not people. The manager comes in, we still have the fundamental library management stuff that she needs to work on and deliver. So that is not necessarily frontline work, but she would be there as backup, and probably you would see the manager come in and have desk time as well. But I still believe we would need the 0.5 to come in and just have that assurance of cover the roster and have everything going through.
Any other questions? So I'm reading in the same paragraph. This has been included in the annual plan for 25-26. So that's already in there now.
Not the 0.5.
That's okay. So you're talking about the
20 to 30.
20 to 30 hours. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
unbudgeted increase of 0.5 FTE library assistant.
That's right. I see that later in the recommendations, trying to marry the two. That's all. Are there any other questions? Observations? Right then.
Just an observation. I mean, we can't carry on like we're doing.
No.
South Way have already said, fine, go your own way. But the observation is, you haven't got much choice, have we? For a while, to make the whole thing work.
When you say to make the whole thing work, you mean us separating out or hiring staff?
To keep the library service.
Level of service.
To go on the level of service where it is. And
Correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like it was a backup to backup. It didn't sound like it was imperative to run the service with the additional 0.5. It sounds like it's a safeguard. I'm sure you don't have several staff on waiting to cover your shop if you need to. I just think it sounds like we've got staff there, and this is a would be nice to have. It doesn't sound like it's core to actually running the library day to day.
I think what Glenda was saying is it probably is, because at the moment we can cover that because there's a pool of staff in South Ryde who can come and help, and vice versa. This is the most potential advantage of putting things, combining things, but there's been a cost in that. So.
Councillor
Further to this conversation, Glenda, if the library was open for 100 days, what's the chances, how many days in that 100 do you think we wouldn't have cover if we didn't hire this half-time FTE?
I don't know.
Like, is it like one half day a year it might be an issue? Like, is that what you see the risk, or is it a couple of days a month you think we're gonna be running short?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out and get back to you.
The way I see it is, if we don't put this 0.5 in, the roster's not going to be full.
That's not, I don't see that that's what it says in the report.
Just going by what Glenda said, that person would be filling a point in the roster.
So at the moment we have, yes, thank you, Brian. At the moment we have a South Ryde staff member in our library for those hours that were noted above. So 23.5 hours per week is what we are currently having topped up by staff. So that's where our level of concern is, to make sure that we've got that cover there to cover those hours.
It's quite, yeah. For me, it's how it's written, and it's things have been added in there that probably should have been left out of it. Then, if we add a 0.5, it will ensure that the service desk is adequately covered. But the other stuff has added complexities in it for me to being able to support flexibility in staffing, particularly covering leave, training, professional development, blah, 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 blah. I've kind of just...
Okay, so if I can reflect back to a workshop conversation when we first started looking at the turmoil, I do recall a conversation around the calibre of the person that you needed, and the calibre of service you're getting from that individual. That person is on a contract, and I think one of the observations that was made then is part of what would enable making the split would enable us to retain the level of competency and knowledge of the library system card tour by retaining that person. So how important a factor is that? And I mean, I get it that we have to make up the difference if we're to retain someone on current contract. Do we have to make up the difference we lose by separating? Am I in the right space?
Yeah, I think the management of the library is different to the roster, which is Glenda is suggesting here on that page 35. I think Deputy Mayor's picked it up correctly. Paragraph should be separated so that the component that we're talking about is South Wairarapa currently covers 23.5 hours a week of roster in Carterton, and that's the piece we're going to propose to pick up with the 0.5.
Right. Okay. So
we should have
not what I
should have just cleared.
Yeah, not what I said at all.
Put a distance between that and the management of the library.
Okay. Thank you. Right. We need to move. So can I have someone move that we receive the report? Someone second. Councillor Newman, seconded by Councillor Cherry Campbell. All in favour? Aye. Against? Motion is carried. We'll take the next two together. No, that's recommendation 2 and 3. Someone to move, please. Deputy Mayor, seconded. Councillor Lawrence. All in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Moving to recommendation 4. Approve the establishing of the Wairarapa Library Service and return the management of our libraries to respective councils effective from 1 July 2025. Someone to move, please. Councillor Cherry Campbell and seconded by Councillor Hanley. All in favour? Aye. Against? Motion is carried. approve the unbudgeted increase of a 0.5 FTE library assistant. Someone to move, please. Councillor Della. Councillor Terry Campbell. All in favour? Aye. Against? 2. The motion is carried. Thank you. I thank you for that because it's.
Anyone abstaining?
Oh, any abstentions?
No.
Motion is carried. Notes, and I'll take the next 6 and 7 together. Someone to move, please. Deputy Mayor, seconded. Councillor Newman, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Any abstentions? The motions are carried. Thank you. Thank you, Glenda. And you get 8.3.
Thanks.
Excuse me.
For me to just go.
I am. Most definitely.
So this paper here is around the economic development providers. So through the long-term plan, the council made 2 decisions around Destination Wairarapa and Business Wairarapa, which was just 1 year renewals of their current MOU, with the hopes that we would be able to develop the new MOU alongside the two other councils moving into this year and then forward. However, through a number of different factors, we haven't been able to do that. With Business Wairarapa, it's a bit messy. So South Waive only agreed to 1 year, Marsden have agreed to 3. So I think what we'll do is we'll continue to work with Business Wairarapa and the other 2 councils. At long-term plan period, we can lock in a joint agreement going forward. So my recommendation for Business Wairarapa is just to renew for 1 more year at this time. And then with Destination Wairarapa, the same thing. There was different agreements. Southwire and their long-term plan this year, so they haven't decided if they're going to renew at their current level, their new level, if they're going to do 1 year, if they're going to do 3 years. So we just need to have a little bit more time working with the other 2 councils and the 2 organisations to get a bit more clear direction on joint activities. There was also a proposal by Destination Wairarapa and Business Wairarapa for a different operating model going forward. That a 1 year renewal of their MOUs just gives them a little bit more time to firm up a proposal coming back to the councils.
Any questions and comments and discussion? The floor is open. So Lawrence,
I have
I can see your brain ticking.
I have a broad concern overall about what we're getting out of our economic development budgets, expenditure relative to the income. It's not a conflict of interest, but I'm paying the economic development rate, targeted rate on 2 properties. And I am a little unhappy with the deal that Carterton gets overall. And the amount of, basically the outcomes that are coming from the organisation for funding, possibly from our council as well. So I think the whole thing needs a rethink. Having said that, so when would these MOUs become effective?
1st of July.
Right, so clearly we're not going to be able to do anything in the meantime. Because Destination Wairarapa in particular needs certainty of funding. But I guess I'm just signalling that I really think we need to look at what we're doing overall and what we're doing.
Yes, I get a sense. I've got a very strong sense coming back here. You're putting it out, and I have my own. So, Councillor Newman.
I just agree with Councillor Lawrence. I would have really liked to have a workshop about our economic development spending, how much is coming in from that targeted rate, what our plan is. There was talk about an economic development type advisory group on council to see what we actually wanted for Carterton moving forward. And at the moment, I really don't feel comfortable with what's happening and that we're just going to renew it without really deep diving into it a bit more. So I'm pretty uncomfortable with making these decisions today without more information and really deep diving into this stuff a bit more.
Anybody?
Linda, can you just confirm for me again what you mentioned before? South Wairarapa have included some budget in their latest long-term plan that they're out with consultation at the moment for the MOU?
For so last at South Wairarapa's last strategy meeting, they renewed Business Wairarapa for 1 year.
Yep.
Effective 1 July. Destination Wairarapa they're considering as part of their deliberations for the long term.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 years.
They haven't confirmed if it's for 1 year or 2 years or.
Okay. And the other question I've got is just around Wairarapa Dark Skies. We've had conversations which I think were leading with, they might have been after our LTP discussions around MOUs of council that council have. And I'm just curious why an MOU with Wairarapa Dark Skies Association doesn't fall back in our community grants and they have to apply for it annually like everyone else.
So when we were looking at the MOU framework, we kind of highlighted which ones were where they sat. And I think with the economic development, so they're sitting under the economic development portfolio and they came under the MOU framework to be considered through that.
Considered much more operational than strategic.
Yeah.
Given, the activities were more at the, how do we manage street light pollution, what can council do with this? So the Dark Skies one was considered very operational compared to the likes of our engagement with DW or BW.
And they're more of a working relationship and a partnership. So a lot of the work that we're doing with Dark Skies, we're working in collaboration with them to help achieve these things, rather than just giving them a grant and saying, you guys go do. So that's the separation.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. 1 hour is one of the key areas for Carterton, with a lot of light pollution coming from 1 hour. So we're working with the Dark Skies Association on how we might manage that and, what we can bring to bear as council. So it's kind of that level.
So that 10,000 sits in our budget and we expend that based on what we've agreed needs doing.
Helping. Yeah. It's
Right.
And you see that as good value for money?
So we've been, short answer is yes. Just the association and the Dark Skies steering group, and we're really starting to see a lot of momentum in that space. Wider than just getting the accreditation. So we've got the accreditation. We're now into maintaining that accreditation, which is where Wainawa comes in.
Yep.
Then we've got the other aspects of the working group coming in. So there's areas of education, there's areas of tourism, there's areas of the other two councils. We've got iwi sitting in that working group as well, and we've got a really good plan of what we're going to achieve right across the region in that dark sky space for the next 2 years. So it feels like we've got the accreditation and we're just launching off into creating something amazing for the Wairarapa, and Dark Skies Association is the crutch that holds that together.
I had a question with I had a question with regards to the Dark Skies Association as well. You mentioned that there's a long-term partnership between the councils, Destination Wairarapa, Business Wairarapa, iwi, and Wellington, New Zealand. The financial contribution is 10K from each council. I'm just wondering if iwi are contributing to this Dark Skies funding as well.
That we haven't had a conversation with iwi to that point yet, but we are seeing contribution coming in from Wellington, New Zealand. Not out of the Wairarapa Economic Development Strategy work, but the Wellington, New Zealand work. Yeah. How much are they contributing? I'm not allowed to say that.
I'm not allowed to say that.
Well, the same as what we're asking for here.
Um,
Sorry, I know that councillor Dalla had, something, but it was in connection to that. So the Wairarapa contributes just under 500,000 in targeted rates, which goes to fund Wellington NZ.
So 500.
We
get-
250, so every year, isn't there, like through the targeted rates, the Greater Wellington Regional Council, which is theoretically goes to Wellington NZ, which theoretically ought to come back to the Wairarapa for
So
economic development.
And
It is,
it does come back through WEDS. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
The Wairarapa Economic Development Strategy, which is a conversation I sort of want to break into. But Councillor, I think you
Yeah, I was just going to say, I sort of echoed Councillor Lawrence's sort of thoughts of it, I think, there. And I've underlined quite a lot of things here. I was just concerned about the spending, you know, I think it's just too miserable, you know.
will have to these days. Councillor Dalla.
Thank you, Mayor. All the time I've been on council, there's always been a economic development, has been contentious, as Ron would probably realise. Promoting the destination business Wairarapa and dark skies, whilst to me they are, two of them, one of them probably is a commercial business, the dark skies. The amount of money that we put in, you never know whether it's working or not. And it's like any advertising budget. If you knew which half worked, you could cut your budget in half, but that ain't the case here. I can see from Destinations Wairarapa's report today that things might be gaining traction, which is really good. And they are also working in conjunction with Dark Sky, and as Linda said, things are starting to take off. But the other thing I would question is Deputy Mayor Steve did about why have we got an MOU for 2 years with dark skies when, it could be contestable every year, or we could make it just 1 year at a time. That would be my question.
Yeah.
So could I have a supplementary to that? Does community grants are not allowed to be allocated for operations? Is that correct?
For staff, not for salaries, not.
So could
But
that
this is
be a
our-
reason?
But this is our operation, so am I right? Am I picking it?
Your operating
This is,
costs, yes.
this is going towards funding and
A
the
paid coordinator.
coordinator.
And the grants are sitting under a different budget as well. So, and I think that's where I've been trying to get some clarity, like not clarity, but keep a really clear defined gap between what is community grant and what are we giving out to our community in that grant space, and what are we doing in the economic development space, and how are we building that. And I think keeping it very clear and keeping it very separate is helping. But I think with the MOU for dark skies, I'm looking at it in the same way that I'm looking at the business Wairarapa MOU, the destination Wairarapa MOU, and the WEDS MOU, and having them all together in that space is where I'm coming from with that. Yeah.
Councillor Newman.
Nice question. How much do we get from our economic development targeted rate? What's the total amount that we're bringing up?
Off the top of my head, Councillor Newman, I couldn't tell you, and I wouldn't want to put a number on the table in a public meeting without.
I feel like that is an important figure to know. How much of that are we spending on these groups, and why? And another question, Go Carterton is not included in this. Why or why not? Do they not sit in the same places?
They do, no, they do sit in the same place. I've been started to have quite regular meetings with Go Carterton. And I did bring up the conversation around their around a relationship At this stage, they're quite happy with where they're sitting and they don't feel that they need to have a financial relationship with Carterton District Council on an ongoing basis. They do, and they will consider their event, the Space Week event, through grants. But again, that's an event that's happening in our community, which is the definite, like the preparation of what we're doing.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just wondering, even if they don't want council support, whether if we did go through the workshop and stuff, there might be things that we would like their support with. So it could be a mutually beneficial.
And I think that's where the beauty of the relationships coming on and the ongoing meetings that we're having on a regular basis that we meet and we'll develop that as we go. But at this point, they went in need of a financial contribution.
Just good for them.
Yes.
So we did recently have a joint presentation put to the Combined Council, and that was led by Destination Wairarapa and Business Wairarapa, and the chair, Business Wairarapa, spoke to their proposition, which was that they felt that they could do a better job of running economic development, essentially, and take everything under one umbrella. It was an interesting presentation, but we haven't gone anywhere further than listen to that point of view. I guess what I have detected is that we've got WEDS, which has a focus on dark skies. We have Destination Wairarapa, who facilitates and assists and supports dark skies. And we have had an ongoing relationship for quite some time with both Destination Wairarapa and Business Wairarapa, where we've allocated. I guess the question I've got is that this money has already been signalled in our previous budgets and it's in the budget currently. And you're asking, council has been asked to approve it for 1 year, which I don't think it's, personally, I don't think that's unreasonable. But what I am picking up very strongly, and it's been floating in the space now for about a year, that council is keen to look at the whole economic development package again and try and join up these bits to see how is the money best spent. And that slice from economic development on the commercial rates has not been, at this point in time, factored for anywhere that I'm aware of. Set funds.
I think too, following on from what you have just stated, that in the combined council meeting there was that presentation, and you said earlier in relation to this about the proposition and the conversation between Business Wairarapa and Destination Wairarapa having a conversation, or Business Wairarapa becoming an ED for the region. Do we know, apart from that conversation, do we know, are they progressing that? Has that been progressed? What's their timeline?
There is a fundamental problem with that proposition. As WEDS gets its funding through contributions by 3 councils, all agreed, and a contribution from Wellington NZ. According to that strategy, which is agreed by all councils and by all other players, including Destination Wairarapa and including Business Wairarapa. And the one tranche of it in particular, which is the Workforce Leadership Group, which I think has been very successful, they are on that. They are on that panel. They attend those meetings. So I'm just a little bit of a loss. I'm myself is just asking why, if you're sitting in the tent as part of the WEDS group, do you want to split it out?
Yes, I guess that's kind of was where my questioning was. From that presentation, what has transpired? Is anything likely to? Yes, sorry.
Yeah, please, Linda.
So at this stage, they are exploring options, and I think at this point, and I think I know noted in there, we haven't had an opportunity to have further conversations from there. I do think they will come back to councils and have individual conversations with councils at our level or at workshop level to talk further about that. But it also gives them time to look at their options about potentially the two organisations just joining together, or is there aspects of things in the economic development space which can change? And it's what Lou was saying earlier. There's a whole lot going on that there's just lots of moving parts at the moment. So I think we just need that little bit more time to see where things are landing and where the organisations are landing, where the councils are landing with their decisions, and then come back together and look at where we go to from there. And just taking the note before around the economic development advisory group or committee or whatever, I'm still exploring the options on that, and I still like the idea of that and bringing that back into a Carterton business, Carterton, probably in a Carterton advisory group, and
Yeah.
and just having a little more oversight of what's happening here in Carterton. It's a time thing and finding to bring it all together and try and make it work. But I'm happy to come back to another workshop and look at that further.
Because
It's when you, can I ask a question? When you say it's a time thing, what is a time frame for getting something like that set up then, Linda? Will it be this triennium or no?
Linda might have got to it had libraries not exploded, dissolved.
So it's a next triennium thing?
Well, I'd say after the annual plan, why wouldn't?
If council wish it, we can do it before the end of June. And we could book in a workshop and do it if that's you would like. I know Glenda doesn't want to do that, but if it's important to you, then we'll do it.
Yeah.
It's important to me and I'll bring some chocolate.
We'll converse around that.
I can just say, I mean, we're about, at some point, we're going to talk about the residents' satisfaction survey. And one of the aspects of Carterton that they really, really are not satisfied with is the situation with the high street. Now, I know that's not, the council can't do much about that, but I do think there's a role for this council in bringing together the various clever people we've got around and helping to get some development in town just by not necessarily funding it, but just by
It sounds like a reason for having an economic development advisory group to me. Because then you've got people there, I mean, twisting the arms of, how long have I been back home? 18 years. And twisting the arms of property owners on high streets has always proven to be a challenge, even just to get them to paint the front of their shop. And I know that Councillor Cherry Campbell and others were heavily involved in voluntarily painting their shops for them. And, so good luck. I think there is room there for that conversation. But in the meantime, we've got a situation that does need a resolution. Councillor Ayler.
I have a question with regards to these different organisations. If Carterton were to stop funding for a year and then have conversations and then in time look to come back together and do something, what kind of impact do you see that would have on these organisations' viability? Would they all collapse if we pulled out, or there's enough going on that could sustain them for a year? Because I hate throwing money at something that we don't know if it's really working, just because maybe in time we'll have a conversation that might fix it, or it might mean that we have a conversation and we go, we don't want to give them money anymore, and we've wasted money in the meantime. So yeah, I'm just interested in their viability if we were to say, we'll come back to you in a year.
I believe we would significantly impact two of the organisations, and the other one would probably fail.
Yeah, two of them are very small, and without this commitment, I'm with Glenda. I could see that because they're very small, it would be a tipping point for them. And the concern in particular with the association, the Dark Skies Association, is we relies a lot on volunteers. However, maintaining the reserve status now that it's been achieved is actually quite a critical element. It's a whole lot easier, as we all know, to maintain a reserve status or maintain anything than it is to
Bring it back from the.
bring it back.
And certification is an ongoing thing.
It's international certification as well. It's not just like a,
Yeah.
I guess what the point comment I'd make would be that this council has a good reputation for committing into things like economic development strategies and living up to its commitments by renewing. The councils make decisions to arbitrarily slash, and then suddenly budgets get turned out. I think the point in there that people don't appreciate is the surprise, is if you signal at a point, okay, we'll honour this commitment here, but these conversations over the next 12 months are going to take place. And because we have the following concerns, but I myself wouldn't want to spring something onto someone like immediately. So do you, Councillor Green?
I just think these types of conversations are going to become more prevalent when local water done wells kind of disappeared, and we as a council are really going to be looking at these things under a microscope, I think. And that's when leading into the next long-term plan. And whoever's around the table here.
And I would add also that if I look, I'm a bit like some others at the table. We give an entity some money here, and then we have the Wairarapa Economic Development Strategy, and we give them money through that to run courses to help promote the ability of some companies and some entities to do better in their business. Like the Rebel Business course that was run, the business course that was done, and that was a good course, but we put money into Biz Wairarapa so they could do that. And so it's understanding where this cobweb, what this cobweb looks like, and is it the right model?
that's where a workshop would be really good to understand all the connecting dots.
Yep.
On stage.
Is it okay that we put that as just an action point, or do we need to do some sort of recommendation that we will workshop it and signal to these groups that we are going to be not necessarily committing after a year? If you've mentioned that we need to signal to them.
Taking it as an action point, I think if there was going to be any change in our strategy, it should be following the workshop.
The most you could say right now is to
we're going to have a workshop too.
Reassess and workshop the economic development strategy.
And we'll bring that back to council because they couldn't make a decision on strategy in a workshop, and council would endorse a different strategy or a different process with
validated. Yeah. All right. So moving forward, it's nearly 3:00 and almost time for a break. So looking at the recommendations, we have 5. Someone we received the report, please. Councillor and Deputy Mayor, Councillor Della, all in favour? Against? Abstentions? Motion's carried. Thank you. Agrees, so we'll take item 2, agrees to renew the MOU with Destination Wairarapa for 1 year, 1 year term at 55, the number stated there, plus GST, plus an adjustment inflation based on the CPI. Councillor Della, seconded by Councillor Cherry Campbell. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? 2. Motion is, any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you. Recorded or yes or no? Yes. Votes recorded. Councillor Aileen would like hers recorded. 3, agrees to renew the MOU with Business Wairarapa for 1 year at 15,000 plus GST. Someone to move, please. So Cherry Campbell, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favour? Against? 2 against. Any abstentions? No. Record the votes. Councillor Aileen, yes. Councillor no. Motion is carried. Recommendation 4 notes the 1-year extension allows more time to further develop the new MOU with both organisations and the other two councils, and that is the right. Someone to move, please. In fact, we'll take both the notes. No, I won't. I'll take the first one because the other one involves money. Someone to move. 4, Councillor, thank you, Gallen, and Councillor Della. All in favour? Against? Abstentions? Motion is carried. 5, notes CDC will enter into MOU with Dark Skies Association for a 2-year term at 10,000 plus GST per annum. Someone to move. Councillor Chair Campbell, seconded. Deputy Mayor. All in favour? Against? 2, 3 votes against. You wish them recorded? Councillor Aileen does, Councillor Gallen does, and Councillor Newman?
Sure.
Yes, thank you. Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Candy. No, I think the satisfaction there is that we have a look at our economic development strategy, Carterton. See that's joined up and start addressing some of the questions that council has debated here today.
Sort of reminds me, we get those models of a solar system with all the things moving. That's how it feels to me. There's a lot of moving objects and none of them people you'd expect it to be.
Some of them have their own mood.
My music is switched.
And I know I had a sense right from the get-go that this has been floating for a little while, but I just think sometimes you also need to consider at what point do people get weaned off? And it's a conversation that should be had. Do people see the support that's been given for economic development as being a infinite decision, or is the expectation that there are goals and targets, and when they've hit those traps, that's it?
But like a hockey association.
Okay. Item 8.4, community satisfaction survey. Here we go.
Marcus to the table and discuss satisfaction survey.
What time are we meant to start? 3 o'clock. My watch is so fast.
Good afternoon, your worship, councillors, team, millions watching. Very,
That's because they know that you're.
Manchester City.
It's a very busy day and a very busy paper, 444 pages, I understand, so I'll get on with it. I just wanted to quickly acknowledge at this point the fantastic work of our favourite Lancastrian over there, David Johnson. Equally fantastic, Sarah Reynolds and Annette Tulloch, who came on board. About 5 minutes, we launched a survey and knocked it out of the park. Getting to 700 people in such short notice was really good effort. Really proud of my team and David. I'm happy to take any questions. I'll take it.
Take it as read. Yes, Councillor Newman.
A question, and it's probably on me for not picking this up before. But why did we limit it to 18 years and over?
Great question. It was a competitive element. We were a little uneasy giving out prizes to under 18s at quite short notice. We didn't feel 100% comfortable doing it, and we were turning around the survey in about 3 weeks, and we had no time to stall to take a look and check the legalities.
Okay, so next survey, we possibly would look into doing it for under.
Yesterday's conversation, absolutely. Yeah, as Brooke said earlier, we were keen at that point. It was just we weren't confident we were going to be successful, and we felt like an incentive would help that. Whether it did or it didn't, I don't know. But we wanted to make sure that we got numbers this time round. In future, absolutely. And yeah, then Brooke and Reed Council volunteered to proofread it for us.
Any other questions? Everybody,
Just discussion on,
please.
on just I think it's fantastic the way you've used lots of different
Channels.
yeah, AI, well, including AI and
Tools.
yeah, thank you, tools to complete it. That's really great.
Yeah, David's done some, and the team at AI Factory have done some fantastic work in incredibly short notice. So yeah, really appreciate that. And that's as well as a lot of the engagement collateral is something we can use again and again. We've used it for the last 2 consultations we've had since the survey. You all appreciate it's a real busy time, and that really helps.
Observations? Okay. Councillor Aileen?
I like the change going from 1 to 10 to 1 to 5. I think that's a really smart move going forward. I think it makes it easy for people to really tangibly engage with what they think.
Yeah, we were hamstrung again by a short time frame, and some of our LTP measures needed to entertain, as we discussed previously. We much prefer them to 5.
I had the same point as Grace. I think that's a really good change. I also wondered about some of the questions, the way they were asked, and the questions themselves, whether they were fit for purpose or we could have potentially asked better questions, which might have been if you were given a different steer from us as to what information we wanted out of the survey. I think some things like High Street, there's not much we can do necessarily. And I think some of the answers, there's nothing that we as council can do about those things.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder if moving forward the next survey, whether some of those questions need to be looked at and critiqued a little bit.
Many things are mandated. We didn't have a lot of leeway. We wanted to take in your feedback and run a more streamlined thing, and secondly change the wording. As Brooke said, it's not hugely friendly. We couldn't again at short notice, and I would have to look into see if we could do it again, because it's very much tied to our LTP and
A number of the
That's
metrics are set in the LTP, and so we have to have a survey question that is word for word what the metric is in the LTP. So that's potentially why some of those questions were worded the way they were. And if we need to change that as we go through an LTP amendment, we could do that and incorporate some slightly more human or youth orientated language to make sure we connect.
yeah, should we do it next year, we'll probably be stuck with the same similar questions, but there's definitely future room for adaptation.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you. Congratulations, Mark. This is a really good survey, and it's easy reading. I really like the results comparing year on year, and also the KPIs sitting there. We can actually see, and the people that read this can see our benchmarks, whether they've been achieved or not. From here, I would like to see our council act on this reasonably immediately and start working on our shortcomings very soon, because without showing some improvement or telling the public that we are doing it, the survey's really meaninglessly, apart from hopefully satisfying Audit New Zealand.
No, I agree. And certainly Ms. Reynolds wouldn't let me do anything other than react to that immediately. So we're very keen to get the plan going.
Any other? Yes, Councillor.
One question, and this is really just for the public, because I think we know the answer, but resident satisfaction with the town's wastewater system, KPI 75, results 62. We can't spend a hell of a lot more money on it than we already have. So
I think that's and throughout what we've seen from the results and the conversation around it is we need to tell a better story of what we're doing. Now, in fact, once in my time in Carterton, we're told we couldn't use the toilets, but 24/7, 365, and most of the rest of the time we have, and tap water's the same. And that is a hell of an achievement, and we probably need to do a better story, telling the story better on how we keep that on. So that's part of what we want to do.
So what was the reason for the lower level of satisfaction than we would have hoped?
We'll dig into it. We haven't had a real bit of time right now. As well.
Well, maybe it's, there's the link in common, they just keep removing the smell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things we've partially addressed it to date, but I think we need to go deeper into that, address those service requests we do get from it. We don't get many, but highlight them and tell that story better. Yeah, and what we are doing, and that was definitely in the long-term plan, ways to address that. So we'll get on with doing that.
Often people, when they respond to surveys, instead of in the last 12 months, have you experienced any of A, B or C? They just read the question going, what do you think about it? And they'll cut back to, and we know when we have conversations, 10 years ago, this happened and I'm still not happy that this happened 10 years ago, but I'm someone stick it in. And people
Absolutely,
do sometimes get a little bit stuck on things like that.
I picked that up in the submissions on local water done well, the number of people who mentioned the smell from the ponds. Well, I have to go back a little bit when I actually remember the last time that happened. And it's not as frequent as it's painted up in submissions. It's not. It's the hangover of a bad experience staying with you.
And then one of the bad experience.
That's right, yeah.
And they build them up to be worse, potentially make a thing.
If you're new to Carterton, you only know it happened once. And if you're not new to Carterton, you probably remember it 6 or 7 times. Stacey.
I just had a question, publishing the results on the website, notifying the residents.
Yeah.
When does that occur?
Well, they're not now in this form, but that's not good enough for us. Part of the plan is to address the lower side of the scale and talk about the high side of the scale as well. So it's more a program of work. We can get, funnily enough, we had this conversation about 12:30 about what we're going to do about it. And we said the high level ones are up already, but we will put the details up and it'll be more about how we plan our work going forward to address what we found out from it. But yeah, and if anybody does want the results, we can probably package them up and send them out to them all.
So on the results, so it'll just be results as opposed to the full survey responses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Did hear the bell ringing. So move straight to recommendations. Someone like to move or receive the report? And I'll tell you what, can I take, with your leave, I'll take 1, 2 and 3 all together. Someone like to move? Deputy Mayor, seconded Councillor Newman, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? Unanimous. Motion is passed, as carried. Thank you, Marcus, and look, congratulations. I think Council's very impressed. Across the board, everybody involved in the survey. It was a very good result. And if I cast my mind back to conversations last year when we didn't do one, very strong views. We were spending too much money and shouldn't do it, and then we ended up with a qualified report. Now we're back to this, but it's a far more eloquent survey than what I've seen in the past. So I think from everybody, congratulations. We will call a break and we will reconvene at 10 past.
Slow.